Well, a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and it gives me great pleasure indeed to welcome all of you to this, the 21st Annual Lloyd's Register Foundation Lecture. And the Academy is, as ever, grateful for the continued and generous support of the Lloyd's Register Foundation. And our partnership has delivered some memorable lectures over the years, and tonight, I'm certain, will be no exception. Indeed, I recall that I had the pleasure and indeed the honour of presenting the Lloyd's Register lecture 15 years ago. Someone once said, "Time marches on and I for one feel trampled," might apply. But I am particularly pleased tonight that Thomas Thune Anderson, the chairman of Lloyd's Register, is able to join us this year and be part of the evening. And I want to give you a very warm welcome indeed, Thomas. Thomas has been an outstanding leader in the maritime industry, and he's been a friend of mine for, I guess, close on 30 years. So the Academy would also like to pay its particular thanks not only to you, Thomas, as the chairman, but also to Michael Franklin, the grants director of the foundation. And we give you a very warm welcome indeed, Michael, on yet another return visit to the Academy. And both of you have been, through the foundation, instrumental in making this event possible, and the Academy is indeed enormously indebted to you both. Now, it gives me very great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for this evening, Andrew Wolstenholme, Fellow of this Academy, and Andrew is the Chief Executive Officer of Crossrail and has the responsibility of overseeing the delivery of the totality of the Crossrail project, a critically important project for London and the UK. And as you would expect from someone in his position, Andrew is highly respected within the engineering community, and he brings with him extensive experience in the delivery of very large construction projects, including the Heathrow Express Line and Link and Terminal 5. Andrew was elected a Fellow of this Academy in July, and we're very delighted to have him with us this evening and to get him started work so early. And he's here to tell us about this fascinating infrastructure project. It's a great example of engineering for growth, which, by the way, is our new campaign here at the Academy to raise awareness of the importance of engineering to economic growth and the well-being of our society. Crossrail is Europe's largest construction project, and work started in May 2009, and there are currently over 9,000 people employed across over 40 construction sites. The engineering challenges are huge, and they have also been very significant. And I know we're all looking forward to hearing more about what has gone on behind the scenes. And indeed, Philip Greenwich, our Chief Executive, and myself had the pleasure of visiting the site, and accompanied by Terry Morgan, another Fellow of ours at the Academy, who's also Chairman of Crossrail. So you see the Academy has pretty well got it sewn up. But before I invite Andrew to deliver this address, I'd very much like to invite Thomas Thune Anderson, the Chairman of Lloyd's Register, to say a few words. Thomas.
So, John, the Academy, first of all, it is a real humbling experience to stand in front of such a crowd here today. But it's also with a great privilege, and on behalf of all the members here, that we would like to thank you very much for setting up this arrangement, which we are very proud to be part of. And I'm sure that I also, on behalf of all people today here, are expressing our appreciation and gratitude for listening to the lecture and to learn more about this very big project. Before I hand over to Andrew, I would like to give you a brief introduction to the Lloyd's Register Foundation. Many of you will remember us as a Lloyd's Register Educational Trust, which has now become the grants section, still ably led by Michael Franklin of the Lloyd's Register Foundation. The Lloyd's Register Foundation is a new charity set up in 2012 following a reorganization of the group. Importantly, the objectives and missions of the foundation remain the same as those of Lloyd's Register's previous: to protect life and property and to advance transport and engineering education and research. That is simply because life matters. We fund the advancement of engineering-related education and support work that enhances safety of life at sea, on land and in the air. We are funded by the profits of the trading arm, which is Lloyd's Register Group Limited, a professional services organization working mainly in the transportation and energy sectors, which also delivers parts of our charitable objectives. The history of our name dates back to 1760, and safety has been at the heart of Lloyd's Register's work since its origins. In the year, 11 men met in Edward Lloyd's coffee house to talk about publishing a list of ships, a register to define the quality and safeguard life and property carried on. In the years since, the Lloyd's Register has applied its expertise across the energy and transportation sectors, helping to make the world a safer place. I'm also extremely pleased to announce that Professor Richard Clegg, in the room here, has recently been appointed Managing Director of the Lloyd's Register Foundation in its new form. In his new role, Richard will be responsible for the direction of the Lloyd's Register Foundation, its charitable activity and its day-to-day running. The Board of Trustees is committed to establishing the foundation as a world leader in the funding of research and scientific and engineering-related education, and Richard's appointment fully reflects this ambition. Richard joined Lloyd's Register just under 3 years ago and was appointed Nuclear Director within the energy business of the group. Before this, he occupied numerous academic roles, including Managing Director of the UK Government's National Nuclear Centre of Excellence. Our relationship, as you pointed out, with the Royal Academy of Engineers is a long-standing one. This is the 21st lecture in a series that we have sponsored, and we are delighted to continue to support as Lloyd's Register Foundation. Supporting the critical infrastructure that society relies on, both for safety of life and quality of life, lies at the heart of the Lloyd's Register Group's activities. So it is fitting that I now hand over to Andrew for his lecture on Crossrail and its immense safety, technical and environmental challenges in providing this important infrastructure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me very great pleasure to invite Andrew to present his lecture entitled Crossrail, Delivering Europe's Largest Infrastructure Project, after which he's agreed to take questions. Thank you, Andrew.
Well, thank you, Sir John. Thank you, Michael and Thomas. Thank you, everybody, for coming here tonight. I see lots of familiar faces, some old friends, some old colleagues, some old bosses. Actually, I see Duncan Michael in the middle. The last time I spoke to Duncan Michael, I was handing in my resignation to Arab. And he said one thing, he said, "You haven't finished the job off yet." And you're absolutely right, so apologies for that. The last time I was in this room was actually with a group of young early professionals from Crossrail. And we were thinking about how this industry could innovate in a very sort of different way from how people were perhaps unpacking that issue. And I have a couple of slides later, because this was probably 6 or 7 months ago, and feel on that we've made huge progress. But it's a great honour to speak here tonight. Looking at this 21st lecture, at the previous 20, there have been some very big and some very awesome subjects. Engineering ethics, low carbon world, last year unmanned aircraft systems. And it was interesting when I was given this opportunity just to think, what would mobilise thought and discussion and interest best? Should we use Crossrail as a £15 billion public sector programme to talk about how you manage the risk, how you manage the commercial side, how you go about funding programmes of this size and scale? What about Crossrail developing skills and employment to improve and to upskill the capability of the sector? We could spend an hour and a half talking about clays and Thanet sands and the technical aspects of tunnelling, all of which are hugely interesting. And in thinking about this, I'm sure many of these questions might come up in questions and answers. I've decided to look at sort of three areas. The first half of Crossrail, as we approach an important milestone of 50% complete towards the end of this year, categorised by the heavy civil and structural engineering, by the mobilisation, by the procurement of UK-based, British-based, European-based supply chains. I then thought what we'd do is to look at sort of the second half, delivering Crossrail the world-class railway. The very different character of systems, system engineering, railway systems, a different risk profile and a different part of the supply chain, and how the organisation has to respond to meeting the different needs of that risk profile as the timeline moves on. And I also want to talk about something very important, and I've called it here moving the industry forward, is about the legacy, is about some of the softer sides of Crossrail, the links with the community, the ability and the responsibility that we carry to train, to upskill, to employ young people, unemployed people across London, the South East and right across the UK. And all three of these, I think, are interesting, I think are important, are different phases of projects, and I'm sure we can get a bit of debate going later on. Now, when I was doing my homework about the Royal Academy of Engineering, I looked into some of the old documentation, some of the new documentation. I was refreshed to see the strategic plan of 2011-2015, leading the profession, promoting engineering at the heart of society, driving economic growth, fostering education, building capacity. Many of those subjects actually lay at the heart of Crossrail too. It's the responsibility that I think that we carry. And equally, when I look at the values that the Academy look at, they align pretty closely to what I believe very firmly in, which is a project that is driven by a very clear set of needs, a very clear vision and mission, and a set of values that is going to take you through the upsides and the downsides of a programme that lasts 6 years of people's careers and crosses the interfaces of many sectors and many different company boundaries. Safety, for us, is a value. It sort of always sits at the top of everything we do. We say on Crossrail there's nothing so important that it cannot be done safely. And we firmly believe and we intend to hand back this industry safer and more healthy than when we took it on. And as I received the baton from Sir David Higgins from the ODA, who did a fantastic job, I realised the accountability and the task that lies ahead. We have inspiration there. People felt actually quite uncomfortable about having inspiration. It's about great leadership. It's about role models. It's about having permission to think out of the box. And I don't think we're going to get to 2018 with a world-class railway line without actually having people thinking slightly differently about how they've done things over their previous generations. There's certainly no prizes for crossing the line as a single company. The only prize on a programme of this size and scale is to do things together, and therefore collaboration sits at the heart too of what we do. Integrity, because we need to deliver against our promises, we need to find ways around challenges and we need to find solutions, and respect, because life isn't always as simple as you think. And whether it's local communities, whether it's stakeholders, whether it's politicians, whether it's internally to our team, you have to find a way through. So let's just talk about the sort of scale of Crossrail. For some who thought it was just a London project, you may be surprised. It starts at Maidenhead in the west. It goes 118 kilometres right the way through central London to Shenfield. On the west, this is the Great West Line, so the blue is existing infrastructure. There's the Great East Main Line, Great Eastern, and there's a small spur that goes off towards the southeast Abbey Wood. That's the North Kent Line. The red elements in the middle is the new infrastructure, 42 kilometres, 21 kilometres of twin-board tunnels, with 8 new deep stations in London, altogether 37 stations, 27 on the surface, and the rest underground. It links the principal areas of population. I've been on this programme for 2 years. You can actually look at transport strategy maps of London several decades ago and see the aspiration to connect London from the west to the east through a deep tube line. So Heathrow, the West End, the City, Canary Wharf are now connected. 1 million people, 1 million extra people within 45 minutes travel time of the principal areas of employment within London. This is a sort of grand project in the UK terms. It reduces journey time. So for instance, from Heathrow to Canary Wharf today is an hour and 15 minutes with 1 or 2 changes. With Crossrail it'll be 45 minutes on 1 train and 1 ticket. And it's important that as we look at the economic worth of programmes like Crossrail, that you can identify what that value add is. It is about short-term growth. As Sir John said, we employ today 9,000 people. By the end of the year, it'll be 10,000 people. At peak, 14,000 people. We've just put £6.5 billion into the UK economy, 95% of which goes to companies based in the UK. And there's medium-term growth in the confidence that it brings to local communities around housing and residential. The business cases that were just sitting negative actually become positive when things like Crossrail comes close to you. The regeneration of tired parts of towns, the ability to develop in areas that weren't previously there, all adds to not just the extra capacity, 10% more capacity overnight, the 200 million journeys per year, but the £42 billion worth of economic worth that comes back over that programme life cycle. So this is a project that is needed, that has a demonstrable business case, has political alignment, and has funding. £14.8 billion funding envelope, 7.1 of which comes from local government transport for London through the uplift of taxes, CILs and business rate supplements, through the contributions of some private sector developers, importantly, and through central government, Department for Transport, through central loans, and there's about £2.3 billion on the Network Rail RAB. So a range, a cocktail of different funding solutions, but one that seems very equitable. London and the South East, from a passenger usage point of view, will enjoy Crossrail, and London will principally pay for Crossrail. And this seems like a certain equity. Now, when I arrived 2 years ago, a very, very simple block diagram of what needed to be done. We were procuring major tunnelling and station contracts. We were negotiating with Network Rail for the £2.3 billion worth of work on the surface, and we were procuring the early station contracts. These were major pieces of civil structural work, 250 million to 500 and 600 million pounds worth of work. And what happened at a time when the market was fairly depressed is that UK, British and Europeans formed around 16 joint ventures to take on this package of work. 3 people specialised in tunnelling, 4 of them specialised in stations, and some did a bit of both. And we'll show you that chart later on as to how more complicated the second half is. So let's talk about the first half risks. As Sir John said, in May 2009, we began to open up the streets and the pavements of London, the early enabling works, £100 million worth of Thames water utility works to replace, to renew, to move. This is Liverpool Street. This is the site of the old Bedlam Hospital, where we know, having dug up 60 plague bodies, there are another 240 to go. There's one archaeologist who is really disappointed that Richard III was not found here. And if you look right across London, the relative disruption of the utilities and the opportunity for the industry to understand better the asset base in and around future major programs is something that we need to sort of take out in terms of the lessons learned. I mentioned archaeology. Just about half a kilometre from here, we found 13 pre-plague bodies in Charterhouse Square. It was the sort of best good news story day for Crossrail there has been in 2 years, to go and find 13 dead bodies. There's a sort of an irony there. But we are mapping, I think, extremely professionally, with great interest, this sort of the archaeological and the historic tour as you cross London from east to west. Now, all of this is really to enable the heavy civils and the heavy tunnelling expertise to be able to find their way without conflict of utilities underneath London. I guess if you took a photograph of Crossrail sort of now, you'd come up with these photographs. You have portals where you launch the TBMs from, normally from the surface. We have a fleet of 8 tunnel boring machines. They normally operate in pairs. They have ladies' names. So Phyllis and Ada started from the west. We have Sophia and Mary from the east, and they're going towards Woolwich Box as we speak and preparing themselves to go through chalk and flint under the Thames. Our 2 modern-day heroes, Jessica and Ellis, the 2 Olympiads chosen by a local primary school in Pudding Mill Lane, so there's some real relevance to get Londoners involved. And then there's Victoria and Elizabeth. And as we were taking Prince Charles around not so long ago, I showed a photograph. He said, "What's that?" I said, "That's Elizabeth." And he sort of chuckled. And Camilla said, "Well, what's that buried in the ground?" I said, "That's Victoria." So let's look at, again, sort of enabling works. This is Tottenham Court Road. Here's Centre Point. Here is Oxford Street. These are the sites that we work on. So this is the Western Ticket Hall. Typically we have a Western and Eastern Ticket Hall. And this is the, sometimes described the poorer end of Oxford Street. Soho Square in the middle. Highly dense, highly populated, difficult sites to work in. We have 40 construction sites that sort of look pretty much like either the East or the West. We have residential, we have commercial, we have retail, and we have tourists. This is what we've been dished up. This is the challenge of building in and around London. And I guess if you are the Star Cafe who sit here, Mario, or you are Father Shearbrook, who is in St Patrick's Church, then the Crossrail business case and the £42 billion and the uplift on your properties don't really have a relevance to you. And these are people in the local community for whom we greatly respect. We have to work with these people. We have to make sure that they give us a license to operate, permission to balance building a big infrastructure program with the local community damage that happens in the meantime. And whether it's Father Patrick or whether it's Mario, he serves a fantastic cup of coffee. We actually pump a lot of our construction workers in. So he's sort of got a quid pro quo here. It's very important that we understand how that operates. And they know most about what you see in this photograph. They probably don't know the extent to which the civil works are going underneath. So the red and the green is the existing northern, the central line. You can see the centre point, but the size and the scale of the tunnelling operation that is happening under our streets of London is something that sort of captures people's imagination. Between the west and the east ticket hall is 250 metres. That's 3 full-size football pitches. You need to decide when you get on Crossrail, and no doubt the operational PR will familiarise yourself, which end of the train you get on. Very often these are 2 parts of London. At Liverpool Street, it's Moorgate and it's Liverpool Street. So there's a colossal size and scale, and you can begin to see and begin to imagine the complexity of doing all this work simultaneously underground, respecting other people's assets, missing the London Underground, the Transport for London assets, and winning confidence that actually what we're doing is safe, is secure, and of the highest technical standards. The only thing that you'll see of Crossrail at the end of the day is the oversight developments, and we'll talk a little bit about those later on. So, preparing the way, we're about to take a short journey of Phyllis underground Phyllis was launched in May of last year by the then Secretary of State for Transport, Justin Greening, and by our Mayor, Boris Johnson, with great aplomb, within 100 metres of Phyllis starting, following a little deeper, I have to say, the Isambard-Kingdon-Brunel route of 1863 between Paddington and Farringdon, came across the Lord Hills Bridge, built 150 years ago, shallow foundations for those days, and if Isambard-Kingdon were here today and knew what we were doing, he would have had a slightly different foundation solution. Anyway, with the help of our consultants, we put 1,100 soft concrete piles around the base. The other slight conflict was the Paddington Throat, where all Network Rail's lines go into Paddington. And as I met for the first time my programme director, Andy Mitchell, who's doing a cracking job, I said it probably isn't a good idea to ask Network Rail permission to tunnel under this Paddington Throat during the fortnight of the Olympic Games. We actually asked permission to go under that throat the day before the VIPs arrived. Such was the stakeholder management, the confidence of the teams, the technical records that we kept, that people felt very relaxed about doing that. So let's just sit just underneath Phyllis for a moment, and we're going to take you on Phyllis's 7.1 kilometre journey. It only takes about 20 seconds, and we'll come back and look at some of the more complex parts of her journey later. So this is Paddington. This is using the sort of the digital technologies that we try and get as much information as we possibly can. So we passed Paddington, we've just gone under Hyde Park, under Park Lane, into Bond Street. This is the historic part of W1. And every time you see a black or a red line crossing, this is the complexity of dealing with the existing infrastructure and the existing assets. Every building that has known piled foundations, every utility, every potential risk in the ground, we put on a single digital model, linking in what's called BIM, the Building Information Management, with GIS, the spatial awareness, and all the charts and the maps that is available. It is a very, very important discipline that this sector has taken a long time to realise the power of. If you're sitting here in manufacturing or aerospace or automotive, then this was your language that you spoke 10, 20, sometimes 30 years ago. I think we're just beginning to understand the power of this, and we'll talk again a little bit more about that. And if you just go back for a moment to Tottenham Court Road, where Ada, here, this is the second machine. Phyllis went over towards the right. Ada went within 85 centimetres. Look at the person sitting next door to you. That's about 75. Some people are a bit closer, I'm noticing. 1,000-ton machine going over the existing operating Northern Line. Of course, when you go over things, you take the overburden away. You'd expect some sense of heave. We were predicting 8 millimetres of heave, and we delivered 1 millimetre of heave, which is why we had the confidence that the Northern Line saw a normal day. The passengers, many of you perhaps here today, would not have noticed, other than during quiet periods you'd have wondered what that slow, rumbling sound was from above your head. That was Ada. And probably the most technical slide I've got, that our framework consultants, our third-party assurers, our processes to give permission to dig, our expert panels are all absolutely imperative as a part of getting the balance between the technical and the engineering risk, between the leverage of production and safety. And here you can just very quickly see the yellow is actually the predicted settlement. So you can see the changes coming up here towards Tottenham Court Road. You can see the critical areas where you've actually got a 0.7% is the amount of head settlement we can see in our tunnel boring machines and the degree to which we control the settlement on the surface. So predicting under Tottenham Court Road between 10 and 8, we were actually getting figures around half of that. We spent 2 years preconditioning the ground underneath these historic buildings, putting in small lance jets of grout, enabling us, when the tunnel boring machines to come, to increase or to decrease the pressure as Phyllis and Ada passed. So a huge amount of engineering, of planning, of technical expertise goes into producing the output from these sorts of machines. And I'm very pleased and I'm very proud to say that as we look at the data this morning, we had completed 19.911. In fact, by the time you finish your second glass of wine tonight, I think we'll be celebrating our 20th kilometre of tunnel. 42 to go, that is almost 50% complete. We have for the cricketers here a sort of a Duckworth-Lewis of how many metres per day you need in order to beat the Australians or actually get your targets in the second quarter of next year, which is an important little tester. Now, we also indulge occasionally to celebrate success. This was Elizabeth coming into Canary Wharf. It's a very demonstrable milestone. People actually believe what you say and that there is a tunnel boring machine. And this is in the Canary Wharf box. Canary Wharf, as a result of Crossrail, will be able to double in size in terms of square footage. And Boris Johnson and Secretary of State for Transport, now Patrick McLaughlin, celebrating the success of that with the tunnellers and the crew of Elizabeth. Now, that was one risk. The second risk is more complex still, and this is called sprayed concrete lining. The small areas, the adits, the escalators, the lift shafts, the cross passages between the two running tunnels have to be done more manually. Still mechanically, but more manually. And this is a process by which you take down London clay or the substrate in front of you and you spray concrete in benches of between 1 metre and 1.5 metres. At the top in the middle, that isn't spray concrete line, that's the Connaught Tunnel, again 1880, underneath the Royal Victoria Dock, and there was no other way but to put cofferdams either side to drain the dock, to take the lid off, all in time for the 7th of September opening of the Defence exhibition at Excel. And it was a fantastic moment when a Type 42 frigate came over that, having hit that milestone, and that's what we sort of call integrity of doing what we say we're going to do. Let me just sort of show you sort of some of the more complex forms of construction. When you put the tunnel boring machines, the top-down construction, the sprayed concrete lining construction, this is actually very close to a small primary school in Whitechapel called the Swanley School. In fact, the Swanley School sits right on the side of this huge, great big vertical structure that we built. Here's another piece of construction. This is building the sprayed concrete lining caverns that I spoke about. And each one of these little sections is another shift pattern as to how you take out the clay bench, you spray the concrete lining, and in that order and that sequence is it safe to deliver. And as a result of those 189 different work patterns, the sequence and the discipline and the leadership is huge to enable you to do this safely. That is the end result that you get. Here are the teams of tunnelling engineers, many from Derry in Northern Ireland, delivering a fantastically safe product. The lower half is in the Thanet stands, is very wet. This is technically complicated. This at a size scale 22 metres by 22 metres. And to give you an idea, Stephanie Green is another 22 metres above that. And these are the sorts of sizes and scales of cabins we're building in Crossrail today to enable the tunnels to proceed. Now, all of that is worth about 50% of the effort for Crossrail. The procurement, the design, the enabling works, half of the tunnelling, about 30% of all the station construction, and the management effort and the management of risk that goes with it. If you now then populate just the infrastructure, you need two more components. You need the rolling stock and the depot, and you need the train operating company. And I've taken on over the last 6 months my operations director, firm, believely firm that you need to change the culture of these projects to an operating environment as soon as you possibly can. So we now are dealing with complex operational issues by having that operate on site, by getting that challenge, that constructive tension between the infrastructure needing to respond to the ultimate operation of the programme. So as you look at the next half, the risk profile completely changes. The contract sizes get slightly smaller. We're dealing with station mechanical and electrical systems, with architectural finishes. We're dealing with the lighting and the ventilation, and we're dealing with the linear railway systems in terms of what we call the P-way, the overhead power lines and the communication systems that go with it. If you were again from manufacturing or automotive, then it's very much a systems engineering approach. and the nature and the leadership of the resources that you need to transition into being able to manage the different risk profile that entertains. This is quite a sort of a useful little reminder that if you take a cross-section, we've sort of done most of the grey in terms of the structures. There are three types of railway systems here. We're dealing with the railway and the tunnel systems, which is to the left of what we call the platform screen door. We're dealing with the stations and the station control systems on the right, and we're dealing with those line-wide systems. All of this has to come together as a program on a single day, delivering a single set of project risks. And you need rolling stock. Politically, probably the most sensitive procurement we're doing. Many of you will have read Thameslink took on Siemens, who make fantastic trains. The problem is that they don't procure as many UK-based jobs. I, as the procurement agent, have to get the right technical train for the best value for money for UK PLC. And we're right in the middle of our train procurement competition to be awarded by the end of the first quarter next year. And finally, there's the people. Let's not forget the people. And we'll talk right at the end about the passenger experience and why we're actually doing this to help London move forward. Now, let's use the BIM model again to understand how the asset base is generated. I'm very, very clear in my mind that I think we can move the industry forward in creating some different centres. The first we used to talk to the Whitechapel community about the adjacency of our works. These are fairly standard run-throughs, but very, very useful to talking to the local stakeholders. And this is now down into one of the central stations. So this is actually Bond Street, and we're going through some of the early stages of design articulation. And this will become the operation model. This is how the operators will start using the spaces and managing the people flows. And if you look at how we can now take down the cladding as we assemble our asset-based model, then I hope very much that we can do what the automotive and the aerospace is. And all these components that make up the stations carry their own maintenance regime for their life cycle, carry their own life cycle model, and start to create the smart railway of the next 2 or 3 decades. Smart railway, not that we have invented the track geometry measuring systems. They exist on national networks today. They exist in London Underground today. But they're very often hung on maintenance trains. So these will, in real time, tell you the track geometry, tell you about the tunnel geometry, and will feed that back into the maintenance systems as often as those trains run up and down the tracks. And if you think what happened even 5 years ago of these being closed down in maintenance hours, this is bringing the modern technology of related sectors into Crossrail and hopefully bundled to begin to bench the latest in a smart railway technology system. So I talked about innovation, and let's sort of look at the final sort of legacy phase, as it were. Very proud to be able to bring a group of young people into this room some months ago, and we scribbled up this model. It is sort of so simple, but it's what I think our sector in our industry don't do very well. We don't tend to turn up on a Monday morning and think of something new. We tend to want to get out a blank piece of paper. And when we do create something new, we're not very good at sharing it. So here's the very, very simple model. That Crossrail in operation as a world-class railway is probably as a result of our culture stealing ideas from other projects, reinventing things through design, through delivery, and through operation, and being generous in being able to package it up in a way that other people can take it off us. And I'm delighted to say we have a very good technical exchange relationship with High Speed 2 at the moment, with Thames Tideway projects, and this is the sort of culture and transfer of information that I think is lacking sometimes in our industry. We sort of formalised. We actually did some work with Imperial College London, Professor David Gann. We did some work with some PhD students coming out of Cambridge under Professor Robert Mars, and we tried to get an industry link between the project Crossrail and between academia to help design a process for formalising innovation. And these are fairly classical sort of tags that you put on the different developments of engineering. Some fairly wacky ones, some radical ones. We've done some work on tunnel energy segments. Why can't we take the heat from 42 kilometres of tunnels and do 2 or 3 things with it? Cool the Tube, which is a programme that's happening in London, and if you travelled over the summer months, wow, was it hot down there. You could probably generate some secondary revenues because there's between 40 and 50 gigawatts of power that can come out of that. So just think of Crossrail 2 now for us doing the sort of startup research work to it. It needs a bit of imagination, it needs a lot of courage, and it needs alignment. So we're not going to see these segments on Crossrail 1, but we've done enough research now to make it a possibility on future engineering programs. Let's come back down to the bottom end of the scale, and last week on Thursday we had our first 250 ideas in the Crystal Centre, the Siemens sort of future city centre in the Royal Docks, and we celebrated the fact that we had decided to invest in 8 ideas. This idea got £3,000. It came from the shop floor, as it were, and it was putting messages on gloves. And as we'd had a spate of accidents with your hands, we wanted to give people the freedom to think differently. And you wouldn't believe the imaginative messages, all very relevant, I have to say, that the workforce are now entitled to sort of put on their gloves to remind themselves of the risks that they face. We gave £8,000 to someone who was given the opportunity to write an app. If you're Apple right now, then there are 35,000 people writing apps for you. How do you unleash the intellectual capital on a program like Crossrail, saying it's okay to make things easier? And we think this is a very, very good little seed corn idea that, provided it passes the IT tick test, then it's okay for us to have an open innovation model around the information that we have on Crossrail. And I think there's some really interesting stuff beginning to bubble up. Now, these tended to come from the young professionals. We call them the early, what do we call them? We call them something rather ruder than that, but we got away with this. And it's beginning to generate, I think, the excitement in Crossrail, and probably even the industry, as now related projects say, can we please tap into your innovation model, and can we share in a much, much more open way than previously? I know Anna Stewart's here, I can see her in the middle. Ray O'Rourke, the Lang O'Rourke Group, have done a fantastic job in pushing the industry right to the front and right to the limits. This is where Custom House Station towards the east is going to be manufactured, built off-site, and it's a great credit to that organisation that it sort of leads in so many ways, and I'm delighted and proud. So Robin Wells from Newham Council is going to use this as an absolute flagstone for East London. And then there's the research and development, the PhD students that we've led into our job sites. And I think there's a recognition beginning to happen that Sir Robert Myers is beginning to intimate that whilst we've designed our sprayed concrete lining walls of X, you can actually have them, because we've now got the glass fibres and the fibre optics to measure what these walls do. You could actually do them for 0.8X. And I'm looking at the consultants in the room. Imagine bringing our Six Sigma program, our innovation program, our research program together, and to find out how we can actually go and save for the future projects material costs and economies. And I think by creating an environment and a subset of activities, we have an opportunity to do that. So, the legacy, the last little bit of this sort of 3. We've captured these in our sustainability report to the 3 subheadings that we're all very familiar with: the economic side, the social side, and the environmental side. This is hugely important. Our chairman, Terry Morgan, has led this from the front for many years, and some people probably didn't believe the business case that sat behind it, to the creation of TUCA, the Tunnel and Training Underground Academy, which is a national asset for people to learn how to work underground safely. Between 3,000 and 4,000 people will be upskilled. And what the industry now needs is a Crossrail 2, is a high-speed 2, is a Thames Tide Link, to make sure that all of those resources are used in the future. 400 apprentices will come out of this. We target young unemployed people through Job Centre Plus, and we ask people to take on graduates, pre-employment, and all the skill sets that I think a modern industry needs but so often lacks. It is a fantastically good news story. It resonates with local and national politicians, and it's something that is within the DNA, I believe, now of Crossrail. The social programs, the local communities, the Father Shearbrooks, the Marios from the Red Star Cafes, the local zoos. Some of these things are conditions in our hybrid bill. A lot of these are voluntary activities that we think is necessary to gain permission to build Crossrail across London and beyond. The environmental side, probably two things that stimulate most discussion. One is the procurement of our rolling stock to incentivise people to reduce the weight of the rolling stock, and over a 30-year period that saves thousands of tonnes of carbon. And second, the imagination to find an economic solution to get rid of 6.5 million cubic metres of clay and Thanet sands. And we happened to find someone who was looking for 6.5 million cubic metres of Thanet sands, and they were the Royal Society for Protection of Birds, and like good networkers that we were, we sort of did a deal on this. So 100,000 vehicles off the road every million tonnes, and we're beginning to create the homes for these birds and these animals for sort of ever. So there's a quid pro quo, a big risk from an infrastructure programme turned into an opportunity, and 100,000 visitors a year in the Essex coastline. The economic side, in two halves, the £6.5 billion worth of procurement into the supply chain, and understanding where the Crossrail pound goes is something that again has resonated at a political level. If you spend a Crossrail pound, then 43p of that Crossrail pound stays in London, the South East. 57 goes to the regions. 58% of that goes to small and medium-sized companies. You know, this is a London South East-based project, but actually it is a very good project for UK PLC. And that has captured, again, a huge amount of imagination. The final mid-term growth is the 3 million square feet of property that we're putting above our stations, is going to stimulate 3 million square metres of additional property space, 57,000 houses, and an 18% uplift on value. So this is a huge stimulus for the local community, both short and medium term. But as I come back to that passenger experience, the reason we're doing this is to provide a world-class railway for London and the South East that stimulates imagination, that is a service that reaches a new benchmark for Metro Railway. Metro Railway is a new term you'll hear. Metro because it's headway in the middle, and railway because it operates at a regional commuter line. And how we get the 6 things that passengers want, on time, every time, seamlessly and fully integrated with TfL system, because 70% of your journeys are going to use Crossrail for only part of your journey plan. Reliable information at every stage. This is a very tame statement, but this is about picking up information as you leave your home and in real time being told which transfer stop to get off, in a similar way that the MTR are beginning to do that now in Hong Kong. There'll be people on the platforms, on every one of our 37 stations. It'll be safe, clean, secure. It won't seem expensive. And whether it's the delight of the design of the station platform, of the urban realm that sits above in the communities of London, whether it's the art programme that we're currently procuring and looking for a little bit more funding for, whether it's the outlying stations that seem pleasantly refreshing, Crossrail is going to produce that sort of world-class standard. My final slide is a challenge that I gave my internal communications team to give me a slide that demonstrates on time, every time, and passenger service. And they came up with a musical. For the musicians here, most pieces are written in 4/4. This is written in 5/4 timing. It's difficult to dance with. So I expect you to sit in your seats. Operationally, it is slightly inaccurate, but it'll begin to give you a view and impression of the sort of service and the sort of assets that Crossrail will be for London over many years to come. Now, I've got to lift this up, I think. How do you get the lid open? We will get there. Can you just So just a bit of fun. I think it's the people, it was the planning, it was the political alignment, it was the simple business case, and it was the fantastic industry that we have in UK, based around the consultancy, the delivery, and ultimately putting this railway into operation. I'm very proud to have the opportunity to lead it. It's in a good place. We're absolutely within our funding envelope. We're predicting, as we were asked, to open this in December 2018, and I'll be delighted to ask questions. Thank you for helping moving London forward. Thank you.
Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, it's your opportunity to put questions to Andrew. He's very willing to take them, and so let's make a start. Yes, sir. Microphone coming.
I know the question.
Andrew, you say you know the question. That puts me on my mettle to surprise you. My name's Martin Barnes. I've been working in attempts to improve the management of big civil engineering projects for a very long time. And you didn't say anything about how you managed to get collaboration between yourselves as client and the main design companies and the contractors and the subcontractors and the various suppliers. Did you use a modern form of contract for that?
Dr. Martin Barnes is the architect of the modern NC.
Oh, shame on you.
Yeah.
I'm not the architect, I'm the engineer.
I mean, I think if you look through my last three major programs, based in UK, Heathrow Express, Terminal 5 and now Crossrail, it has always been my style of leadership that to mobilise and to unleash the real capabilities of the bright people, the teams. You need to have a formal contract that can transition across the boundaries from which so often we've got into contractual difficulties and into, I think, very old-fashioned behaviour. The contract that you want enables you to pick up the challenges and the discontinuities as you go along. So you're absolutely right. I mean, the NEC style of contract is serving us very well. We are using it and deploying it in various different forms. It requires leadership and tight management in order to make sure that you deal with the challenges and the issues as you go along. But very much part, I think, of the DNA is the collaborative form of work. You have to be able to use it to articulate, to leverage the abilities within the supply chain. You also have to use it to make sure that you manage the contract very tightly. Sure. And there are many instances where the pain and the gain has either hurt or supported people through the contract. And being 50% through, clearly what I need to be able to demonstrate is tough but fair outputs and good value for money for the public sector. But the NEC contract is a very good form, and we're very pleased to be using it.
Good time to... You quit when you were ahead, sir. Huh? Good. Now we're ready for the next question. I'll go down the middle here.
So, just in the front here.
Yes.
Jack Levy, City University. Can you enlarge a little on the relationship with London Underground and Transport for London? And will Crossrail eventually become part of that system?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I think as you take the lessons learned out of projects like Crossrail, you have to look at the governance, how they're set up, how they're structured, and whether that's right for future projects. Terminal 5, when we did that at Heathrow, was too big for BAA to take on, so we had a special purpose company. It had its own structure. It was very much governed by the PLC main board of BAA, but it was sort of left to procure, to recruit and to retain its own workforce. Crossrail, similarly, at 14.8 billion pounds, it was decided quite correctly that Terry should be the chair of an independent board. Crossrail, therefore, responsible for delivering the scope, the procurement, the funding, the risk management, not the funding, the risk management, and therefore it needed to relate in a different way, but a tied way, to its two joint sponsors, DfT, central government, and TfL. You're quite correct in saying that the end operator is going to be Rail for London, that Rail for London is a subsidiary of Transport for London, and therefore we're going to have to find a glide path into the independence of the Crossrail board, free to make the right decisions on behalf of Crossrail Limited, as opposed to the first day of operation. So, over the course of the next 5 years, and I think I said early on that I've already taken on my ops director, who equally reports to myself and Mike Brown, MD of London Underground, which is a very sensible sort of recognition of the transition that's going to happen. So I'm very clear in my mind that the independently governed model is very suitable for projects of this size and scale. I think it's very repeatable. I think the Crossrail 2 should look at a very similar model as and when that comes to the drawing board. And I think that in a very grown up and a very mature way, we have to be able to find that sort of adapter piece that enables us to plug into, to manage the risks, to see who the best person is to manage the risk at any one time, and then to transition into the parent organisation during the operational phases. The train operating company, incidentally, who's been procured at the moment, is likely to be asked to be very much a fundamental part of bringing the asset into operation. So if you look at the train operating company, which is neither Crossrail nor Transport for London, Transport for London, which will be the infrastructure manager, and ourselves, the deliverer of the infrastructure, we all have to work in concert in a grown-up collaborative way to make sure that those risks are managed as it goes into the early days of operation.
Just on that, Andrew, you were putting quite a lot of emphasis on the fact that you've adopted very modern technology, BIM and so on, and you've obviously had an enormous amount of learning from this project already. If you were to move to Crossrail 2, what do you think those total benefits would be to that project?
If we were to sort of put a learning document together right now, then sort of some of those first 50% sort of there's risk challenges. The PDA, the document that we have that describes Crossrail is a very good piece of work. The governance process, the procurement model, the risk management model, the program controls, these do not need to be redesigned again. You spoke about BIM, the technologies, the digitalization of our industry, crossing the boundaries between the clients, the consultants and the contractors, is still, I think, a technology that is only just beginning for people to understand the value chain. I would love Crossrail 2 to be so digitally modelled in the consultants' offices from day one, including the life cycles and the maintenance cycle. That's got a long way to go yet. But if you take those fundamental building blocks of the need, the brief, how you procure it, who owns the budget, and who manages the stakeholders, then actually you've got the heart and guts of a core program team that can deliver any size and scale of program.
And the sort of savings that there might be?
Oh, savings, I see. I mean, if Crossrail 2 is a change order given to me tomorrow, we could mobilise a few more tunnel and boring machines within a few months. Actually, it would be.
I can see we're not going to get you quite there, but maybe over dinner.
I would think you can find 10 to 15% savings by actually moving straight on to that next job, and that is a very big differential within a 32-year life cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question. We go this side. Richard. Yeah.
Good evening. Fascinating talk. Thank you. Rick Parker, Rolls-Royce. I wanted to actually ask a question not about the engineering, but about the archaeology. Most major construction sites dread finding the odd hunchback king underneath their piles. Yeah. And you seem to have planned that in from day one. Is that right? That you liaised with the archaeologists up front. You suspected you would come across interesting things and planned enough time for them to do proper investigations.
I think that's right. And I think if I go back to my Terminal 5 days when we had a 200-acre site and we had 180 archaeologists all at once, I think they almost used that project to sort of move their own industry on. In previous days when they found something interesting, they'd sort of research it there. Today, if you looked at Charterhouse Square, the 13 bodies were actually removed quite quickly, with great respect, with great humanity, but retaining all the scientific evidence they needed. So we will give them lead-in time, we'll give them engineering support, we'll give them access, but in parallel with our engineering program, they are doing their research as they move forward. Much of their research now is done back in the lab, back with the evidence they found on site, cataloguing as they go along. So I think there is now a very different way of working with the archaeological community. I don't think there's the big risk that there used to be, that there may be months or even years of delay, the fear, and therefore the lack of collaboration. I actually think the two sides of the industry go together very well.
Sir Duncan, you were mentioned in dispatches at the beginning, so I think it's only fair
this might
you
be
have a
bollocking
chance to respond.
Andrew, you in this big project, you've disrupted quite a lot of land. To what extent is Crossrail able to capture the added value that you're going to stick on these bits of land?
So the hybrid bill, which is a very intrusive form of sort of legislation, gives you the right to buy the land that you define within what's called the red line. Compulsory purchase of the oversight developments for some would be breaking of business plans, for others would be making of business plans. Generally, we would like to partner with the owner of that site. We would like to work with that partner and to put the value back in that site. Crossrail actually generates around £500 million of development uplift because of the added value. If I go to a number of people I see in the audience, Hong Kong, MTR is 80% funded by the development uplift on its property work. So Bond Street is going to have a 6-story commercial office building. It's going to look fantastic. But if I was in Hong Kong Central Kowloon right now, that would be 92 stories high. So what we're able to do in London is to, I think, work with the landowners and the developers to maximise the potential opportunity. Interestingly, the study we did last year through an international property consultant called GVA, many of you who work with them, to look at the influence of land prices within half a kilometre and a kilometre of a Crossrail station, began to articulate the confidence and the uplift of property values. 18% additional uplift to a residential property within a kilometre. This may be good news or bad news. If you rent, it's bad news. If you own, it's good news. Uplift against the market between now and 2020. The reason why British Land are buying retail outlets in Ealing at the moment is because of the confidence it brings. The reason why developers are buying in Abbey Wood at the moment is the confidence that the sort of land price will not only stabilise but will increase. So there's a huge economic benefit in being able to work collaboratively with the people who own the parcel of land that you want, and collaboratively with the councils and local governments in being able to anticipate the future uplift in value when something like Crossrail has been through.
Yes.
I'm John Cartledge from Non-Travel Watch, which is a consumer group. Anyone who's travelled on the Piccadilly line to Heathrow or on Thameslink to Gatwick or Luton will know that the type of train which is ideal for carrying a single commuter for a 10-minute journey in central London is not the type of train that's ideal for carrying a large group of people and their luggage on a much longer journey to and from an airport. Your railway is trying to do both. How do you reconcile those conflicting requirements in the design of your rolling stock?
I suspect this will carry quite a lot of debate and feedback. Rail for London and our sponsors have spent a long time trying to research what is ultimately going to be a hybrid. You're absolutely right. If you get on the 8:24 train from Maidenhead, then you've always considered the orientation of your seats to be forward or backward facing with probably a table in between. If you get on a metro station at Bond Street, then you'd either be sitting down longitudinally or standing up or putting your bum in one of the bum rests. Actually, what we're trying to do is we're trying to mix and match the best orientation for all of those journey types. And you're absolutely right in challenging, in a sense, is there any solution out there that is going to meet everybody's needs? There's been a great debate around the space you have or you don't have for luggage. There's been a great debate around whether you have toilets or don't have toilets. But if you consider that this is a high-frequency, high-quality metro service with high volumes, 1,500 people per train, you know, 2.5-minute headways in central London, then I think people will begin to understand the geometry and the layout of the rolling stock to be one that is highly relevant, highly suitable. It'll be air conditioned, it'll be light and free, will set, as my slide said, a new benchmark for that sort of metro railway. So can I ask you just to hold on, to climb on that first train from Bond Street in December 2018, and I'd be delighted to hear whether you think we've actually got that hybrid design right for Crossrail. I'm very confident. I'm very confident, and I think we're going to have a train that's going to suit most people's needs most times, and it'll get a huge, great big tick.
Dougal?
I'm Dougal Goodman from the Foundation for Science and Technology. But a long time ago I was a young engineer, and I was told at the time that the tube's biggest danger was from interference with a water main. You showed very spectacular pictures of the 3D imagery of the lines and so on. How have you managed the uncertainty of the as-builds?
Of the as-builds?
The water mains,
okay.
You don't know quite where they are.
Right. Well, we sort of know where they are. I don't know if there's anyone from Thames Water in the room at the moment, but let me put this sensitively. I'm not entirely sure that they always know where their water mains are. I think I mentioned £100 million of work that we had planned, and we had put risk assessments around what effect do we have when we go close to water mains, and how do we make sure that the residual risk left by going past them is safe for the transport system that Crossrail is. We have used very modern technologies to understand what happens to the water mains. We've used a huge investment in non-destructive testing to understand the condition of the water mains, and there is a series of categories where we either lift them up, replace them and renew them, or we actually do nothing because we haven't had any effect at all. I think that the BIM modelling that you have is all about understanding the asset data over a life cycle. That I know that all of our supply chains, as part of the scope of work that we took on, is to make sure that they map those and they retain those as accurate records for the next major program, small program that comes along. So it is absolutely essential that part of the culture of our industry is to get the accuracy based, I think, in the as-builds. And the digital technology allows you to do that. But it is a discipline, and it's one that is still only just beginning to understand, the value of which will be huge over the next sort of 2 decades, as London is probably lifted up and put back together again on several different occasions.
Going to the second row here.
Thank you very much. Matthew Young from Public Policy Projects. We're a Westminster think tank. This is a non-engineering question. You'd identified political alignment as one of the critical success factors. My recollection is that Crossrail is certainly 20 years old as a concept. What does that tell us about other major infrastructure initiatives? Does it really take that long to get the political alignment?
Well, I mean, I think that this is probably a debate for now and over dinner and several evenings to come. I recognise that Sir John Armott has recently issued a report being sponsored by the Labour government to understand what is the political institution, what is the mechanism by which actually we can get alignment ahead of the sort of the short-term cyclical nature of politics that agrees that the right long-term development of UK PLC's infrastructure and master plan is going to get political support. There will be several different London mayors fighting over whether it was them or their predecessor that actually put the nail in the sort of funding coffin to develop the alignment that ultimately was needed. So I think that political alignment needs strong business cases around infrastructures that are of national importance. I think when you can achieve that, and you see the debates going on at the moment, the uncertainty that's created around national infrastructure that doesn't seek that ultimate political alignment. But I think that perhaps John Armott's idea of having a 30-year visibility, of having a parliamentary debate every decade, about having some certainty about what UK PLC needs for the next horizon, probably needs to be debated and understood. And it is that sort of mechanism that is going to take out the decade or so. And when I was doing Terminal 5, we had a 4.5-year public inquiry. This was not about more aircrafts in the sky. This was about developing a passenger terminal between two runways on a sewage pit. And so there's a huge amount of misinformation going on and delay that ultimately caused sort of Heathrow hassle. That 5 years, the 10 years that is probably already programmed into the next major infrastructure program, has to be taken out by political consensus, by smart infrastructure planning, integrated infrastructure planning, for which the public and politicians can see a need and will gain that sort of support more quickly.
Yes, sir. It is.
Ian Taylor, Living Planet. You didn't mention communications and security going all through the line, and I just wonder whether you can reveal publicly some of the things that you're doing in order to deal with the inevitable problems that will emerge in any railway system in the modern era.
So this was a question about the communications and the security.
Well, I'm not talking about the Wi-Fi, which I'm talking about the internal communications, secure communications links, linking in with the first responders and other security measures on what is obviously going to be a very sensitive line through the centre of London.
Yeah. Well, I guess Crossrail, in a sense, is no different from any other public infrastructure in that it needs to make sure that the secure systems are designed and procured and are managed and operated in that way. I can't talk, for obvious reasons, about some things that are going on, but I think that the joint sponsors, that the supply chains that we are getting to design and to build these systems are experienced in dealing with this sort of technology and the sorts of security issues that go along with it. So I'm not conscious that I'm sitting on a risk that hasn't been thought about. We are certainly aware of the sorts of security threats that you get on public infrastructure, and that is one of the reasons why one takes an operator on early, to make sure that the operating concepts, the responses to some incidents, if you like, and the ability to look at the security and the intelligence that goes with that is all aligned with the modern piece of infrastructure called Crossrail. You know, having been in the aviation world for a long time, having understood the obvious security risks that result, some of this you can deal with the infrastructure, the way you design the infrastructure. Some of this is about the process, the way you manage it, and some is about the people and the leadership as to how you actually take that operation forward. All three of those components are part of the Crossrail programme.
Yes. Midway. Yeah.
Adam Bodnar. Super story. Super story. And now's not the time for sceptics to come along. But if I remember rightly, when the Terminal 5 had its first public announcement and so on, there were one or two grumblings and gremlins, and the public image of the start of that wasn't what it might have really deserved. Is that something that you've had a thought about and we're going to avoid, or you're going to avoid, in this much bigger programme?
Well, I often ask this question: who lost their bag on day one T5 opening? It was a travesty for the industry that what happened on day one in Terminal 5 actually sort of occurred at all. It was a very simple interface between people, process and infrastructure. Terminal 5 delivered 1 in 1,000 bag losses within 3 months. It wasn't predicted to do that within the first year of operation. There was nothing wrong with the bag system. So the lessons you take forward from that is you don't want to design in hard, big bang openings. You want to be able to open and tease in the infrastructure in a certain sort of staged manner. So actually, when we talk about December 2018, that's stage 3 opening. Stage 1 is taking on the existing Liverpool Shenfield services with the existing rolling stock, with the new train operating company, and beginning to practice the train operating company building up its capabilities. Stage 2 is actually putting the new rolling stock on the existing line from Heathrow into Paddington above ground. And stage 3 is to begin to put that rolling stock below ground to Abbey Wood. So very sensibly, I think lessons have been learnt of the past, that if you want to make sure that your public reputation delivers the promise on day one, you have to begin to design in the soft starts to get the track miles on the rolling stock, to get the technical interfaces ironed out, and to do it in a way that you don't have the press breathing down you, waiting for the only story that they wanted, which was a failure on day one. So I do think that we're beginning to think about this. You know, a lot of thought's gone into when do you start calling Crossrail Crossrail? You know, when the first train is operated by a Crossrail train driver, probably not. When actually you can begin to articulate and celebrate the new infrastructure with the new rolling stock. So a lot of care and a lot of attention is going to be put into, you know, the reputational style of Crossrail, and I do believe that the risk profile is probably merging and transitioning towards one that we'll be able to manage and we'll be proud of when we celebrate the opening.
2 more questions, and I already got one down here.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Roger Venables from Crane Environmental and SQL, but also editor of Innovation Research Focus. And I have an innovation question, Andrew, if I may. I wonder if you could give us, you've given us lots of insights about the innovations that have happened, are happening, but I wonder if you could give us an indication of what you think is the most encouraging in terms of your teaching the future projects. What's the most encouraging innovation that's happened so far? And secondly, I'd be really interested to know whether it has this come about as a result of a planned, targeted, intent direction of thought, or perhaps just a positive, unintended consequence of some other strand of work.
Well, innovation for me is about culture and leadership. You know, what encouraged me so much about the awards we gave out last week was not the fact that it was a message on a glove, the fact that it was an app, but the idea that it's okay to think differently, the idea that we're going to process this and share it. And would you prefer to work in an organisation where people did that stuff or kept it all to themselves? For me, innovation is not about producing new products. It can be process, it can be product, it can be behaviour, it can be many, many different things. Bringing other people's ideas to bear on your own situation is about adding value. That's innovation. I think the most exciting bit is now the culture of Crossrail, where you immediately get a process of learning and sort of quizzitive behaviour on someone down the East End, let's say, in a piece of spray concrete lining, wanting to steal the ideas from the West End. And I think there is huge value. You know, you spoke about sort of the hidden value, huge value in being able to immediately identify where best in class happens across the dimensions of a programme, and immediately have the cultural aptitude to want to transfer that skill and learning within a sort of a safe Crossrail environment. Now, where we get great ideas and people's IP appearing is why I wanted to link in with the Imperial Colleges of the world to understand how you can safely share your ideas and your IP. So it's a combination at its lowest level of being great transfers of best practice. It's a culture where people can safely think differently out of the box. We may not take it up, we may not give them 3,000 quid, but we're actually going to encourage them to do more of it. And down the back end, down the radical end, there'll be 2 or 3 ideas that come out and emerge from Crossrail that will be products that the industry will take on and move forward to the next phase. The one that I get most excited about, perhaps the most boring, is the culture within Crossrail of people wanting to share their ideas.
Is there one final question? There is. Oh, sorry. Yep.
Now then, spoil it, Dr.
Martin Barnes again. Andrew, you've told us a huge amount about how this project was managed, and you're only 50% of the way through. But as somebody as competent as you will have noticed things that you do differently next time. What are they?
I think, I mean, there's some fairly simple things. I think that, you know, the architects of how you package programs of this size and scale up did an extremely good job in the sort of the left to right pass. If I look at some of the complex interfaces we have interwoven into some of those station boxes and tunnel boxes, you have to be able to balance up how big is the supply chain and how much risk can you put on one single supplier versus how complex are the technical interfaces that you design in. And I suppose that there was probably in one or two areas, easier ways to be able to design in some of the complex technical interfaces. You know, you look typically at our signalling. Should we have taken the risk of putting a European system that hadn't yet been designed, and apologies if there are people who are complete fans of it, on day one operation, or should you accept that there's a complex technical interface in order to handle? I think we got that decision just about right. So I think there's something about how we package this vast scope of £14.8 billion up. I think that the independence of the board was a perfect solution for a complex, high-value, high-risk programme. I think that probably the relationships between some of our suppliers at an early stage weren't developed early enough. I think that if you need to expand an organisation very quickly to take on 300 or 400 people to help you manage things out in the field, then you need to really understand on day one the style of the relationships that you need between these big leadership and organisational parties, between the incentivisations that actually align internally to that organisation, how on day one you're going to go for that moving London forward, delivering a world-class railway line. And of course you begin to feed in the sort of the imperfections of our industry. And what you need to be able to do is to, on day one, absolutely align the needs, the cultures, the leadership, the organisations to go for a simple, achievable goal where everyone scores success and the industry will move on much quicker as a result.
Good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll all agree that we've worked Andrew extremely hard. Not only has he given us an excellent paper, but you've worked exceedingly hard during the Q&A session, which was equal to the brilliance of the presentation. So I think, ladies and gentlemen, let's give him a very warm round of applause. So I think that says it all almost, Andrew, but this is truly a remarkable project, and those of us who rather like very large-scale projects are going to go home tonight inspired by the scale of this one, the challenges that you have overcome, the challenges still to come, but we will go home confident in the leadership that you have displayed this evening, and of course we have great confidence in your chairman, Terry Hill, as well. I don't know, Terry, if you would like to say one closing word at this stage? Nothing like putting your chairman on the spot.
I have to say, I've stood here tonight and I've learned things about the programme, even though I've been involved for the last...
Microphone.
Hello, everybody. I have to say that as I've been sat here tonight listening to Andrew, who's been with us now for just over 2 years, listening to the story of Crossrail, and I've been with it for 4, I've learned so much more about the programme than I thought I knew. And I just thought that was a spectacular presentation. And the Q&As, Andrew and I are used to them, and there were some new ones again tonight. We're always asked about signalling, so we're very well addressed on that. But I have to tell you that when Andrew talks about culture and the behaviours that support the vision, it's for real. This is, by any standard, a world-class programme that is going to demonstrate that in the UK we can deliver huge projects on time and on cost, and should give our politicians the confidence to get on with the next big project, because that's the big challenge right now, is we can't afford to stop. We've learned so much.
Yeah.
And that's really the big question that we've got to ask ourselves going forward.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. So, ladies and gentlemen, we invite you now to go down. It is downstairs? Downstairs for some liquid refreshment, and then a few people are going on to dinner. So thank you very much indeed again, Andrew. What a smashing evening we've had. We're extremely grateful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done. Fantastic.